What does a man do when he has a good life, a loving wife and a stable career? For some, it's a blessing to be cherished. For others, it's a comfortable cage they're desperate to escape. This is the story of Ethan Cole, a man who looked at his quiet, unassuming wife Anna and saw a roadblock to the life of luxury he craved. He thought he found the key to that life in the arms of a glamorous model, a woman who represented everything he believed he deserved. He thought he was trading up securing his future with a dazzling affair. What he didn't know was that his quiet wife wasn't just his partner. She was his judge. He was in the final stage of a 5-year, multi-billion-dollar loyalty test, and he was about to fail spectacularly. To any observer in their manicured Bellevue suburb, Ethan and Anna Cole were the picture of quiet contentment. Their 2-story craftsman house, with its neatly trimmed lawn and tasteful grey-blue paint, was a perfect blend of modern comfort and understated class. They'd been married for 4.5 years, a union that seemed as solid and dependable as the old oak tree in their backyard. Ethan Cole was a man on the ascent, or so he told everyone. As a senior project manager at the burgeoning tech firm Omni Solutions, he was handsome in a conventional way, with sharp suits, a confident smile, and a firm handshake that he believed sealed deals. He thrived on ambition, his mind a constant whirlwind of stock options, promotion tracks, and the ever-present desire for more. He wanted the corner office, the German sports car that wasn't least the kind of respect that turned heads when he walked into a restaurant. Anna, his wife, was the anchor to his high-flying kite. Or as he was beginning to see it, the string holding him back. Anna Peterson, as he'd known her, was beautiful in a way that didn't demand attention. With warm, intelligent hazel eyes, a cascade of chestnut hair she usually wore in a simple braid, and a love for oversized sweaters, she was the embodiment of comfort and stability. She worked from home as a freelance translator, specializing in obscure historical texts. It was a niche field that, according to her, paid the bills and gave her the flexibility she cherished. Their life together was a routine of peaceful domesticity. She would have coffee ready for him every morning, the rich aroma of a dark roast filling their sunlit kitchen. She'd listen patiently as he recounted his workplace dramas, her gaze never wavering, offering thoughtful if simple advice. She managed their finances with quiet efficiency, finding deals, investing modestly, and ensuring they lived well within their means. To Ethan, her frugality was beginning to feel less like prudence and more like a lack of vision. "Look at this," he said one Tuesday evening, tossing a magazine onto their coffee table. It was open to a glossy spread featuring a tech CEO's sprawling waterfront mansion on Lake Washington. "This is David Miller. I was 2 years ahead of him at Stanford. 2 years. And he's living like a king." Anna looked up from her book, a leather-bound history of the Byzantine Empire. She glanced at the photo, a symphony of glass, steel, and infinity pools, and offered a small, placid smile. "It's a beautiful house, Ethan. But it looks a bit cold, don't you think? Imagine the heating bills." Ethan sighed a gust of frustration. "That's not the point, Anna. The point is about achievement, about what's possible. We're saving for a new deck and he's buying yachts. We have a good life," she said softly, her eyes returning to her book. "We have each other. We have this home. Isn't that enough?" Enough. The word chafed at him. For Anna, enough was a warm fireplace and a good book. For Ethan, enough was a moving target, a horizon he could never quite reach. He loved Anna, he told himself. He loved her kindness, her steadiness, but her lack of ambition felt like a dead weight. She didn't understand the fire in his belly, the hunger to conquer the world, or at least their corner of the Pacific Northwest. She had no interest in the lavish corporate galas, the networking events, the performative displays of success that were the lifeblood of his world. She would attend if he insisted, standing quietly by his side in a simple, elegant dress, but she always seemed like a visitor from another world, uncomfortable under the bright lights of wealth and power. This growing disconnect was a silent chasm opening between them. He started seeing her quiet nature, not as peaceful, but as passive. Her contentment wasn't zen-like, it was a lack of drive. Her careful budgeting wasn't smart, it was a fear of taking risks. The truth which Ethan was completely oblivious to was far more complex. The woman he knew as Anna Peterson was in reality Anastasia Volkov. She was the sole heiress to the Volkov consolidated fortune, a private, multi-generational global empire with holdings in logistics, precious metals and private equity. Her family was notoriously reclusive, their wealth so vast and old it was spoken of in whispers in the highest financial circles. They were richer than David Miller and a dozen others like him combined. The Volkovs had a tradition born from a history of being targeted by fortune hunters and charlatans. Any person marrying into the direct family line had to unknowingly pass a 5-year test of character. For 5 years, the Volkov heir would live a modest middle-class life under an assumed name with a carefully constructed backstory. Their partner would be given no clue as to their true identity. The test was simple: would they remain loyal, loving and true when there was no promise of wealth? Would their love be for the person, not the phantom of a fortune? Anastasia had met Ethan at a university library. He was charming, ambitious, and seemed genuinely captivated by her mind. Her handler, a discreet and impeccably professional man named Mr. Davies, had vetted him thoroughly. He seemed perfect. For 4.5 years he had been. He'd been a loving husband, attentive, and kind. The test was scheduled to conclude on their 5th anniversary in just under 6 months. Upon its successful completion, Ethan Cole would be welcomed into a world of unimaginable privilege. The private jets, the Monaco apartments, the endless resources of the Volkov empire, it would all be his. But now, so close to the finish line, Anastasia was watching cracks appear in the facade of their perfect life. She saw the longing in his eyes when he looked at other men's lives. She heard the frustration in his voice, and she felt a cold knot of dread tightening in her stomach. Mr. Davies had warned her this was the most dangerous phase. When a man feels he's earned more than he has, he'd said in his crisp British accent over their secure line, he becomes susceptible to temptation. The test is designed to provide that temptation. Anastasia had brushed off his concerns. He loves me, she'd insisted. Ethan is a good man. Now, as she pretended to read her book, she watched her husband staring at the magazine with an expression of pure, unadulterated envy. A good man. She held on to the thought, but it felt increasingly fragile, like a thin sheet of ice over a deep, dark ocean. The temptation Mr. Davies had spoken of arrived in a shimmer of gold sequins and a cloud of expensive perfume. Her name was Krystal Monroe, and she was the centerpiece of Omni Solutions' annual Tech Summit after-party. She wasn't just a model, she was an influencer, a brand ambassador, a living, breathing symbol of the lifestyle Ethan craved. The event was held at a sleek, modern art gallery downtown. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a glittering panorama of the city lights. Men in tailored suits and women in designer dresses mingled their laughter echoing off the polished concrete floors. Ethan was in his element, a glass of champagne in hand, networking with a practiced ease. Anna was by his side, looking lovely in a deep sapphire dress. But as usual, she was a quiet island in a sea of noise. She spoke when spoken to, her smile gentle, but she made no effort to command the room. Ethan was talking to his colleague Ben Carter, a man whose ambition was even more rapacious than his own. "You see that?" Ben murmured, nodding towards the bar. "That's Krystal Monroe, the face of the new Aura smartphone campaign." Ethan followed his gaze. Krystal was leaning against the bar, laughing with a group of venture capitalists. She was stunning in a way that was almost aggressive. A cascade of platinum blonde hair fell over one shoulder. Her skin was tanned and flawless, and her dress seemed artfully designed to catch every ray of light. She radiated a kind of high-wattage confidence that Anna completely lacked. "She's impressive," Ethan admitted, his eyes lingering. "Impressive dude, she's a kingmaker. Get a photo with her, tag her on socials, and suddenly you're not just a project manager, you're a player," Ben said, nudging him. "Go on, what's the worst that can happen?" Ethan glanced at Anna. She was examining a sculpture in the corner, seemingly lost in her own world. He felt a pang of guilt, quickly suppressed by a surge of something else, a thrilling, rebellious energy. This was his world, not hers. He needed to play the game. He straightened his tie and made his way to the bar. "Krystal Monroe," he said, his voice smoother than he expected. "Ethan Cole, I'm a huge admirer of your work on the Aura campaign. Brilliant strategy." Krystal turned her bright blue eyes, scanning him from head to toe. A slow, calculated smile spread across her perfectly glossed lips. "Ethan Cole," she repeated, her voice a low purr. "Thank you. It's always nice to meet someone who appreciates the art behind the commerce." They talked for 20 minutes. She was witty, sharp, and flirtatious. She asked about his work, but her eyes held a deeper question, an assessment of his potential, his ambition. He found himself boasting, exaggerating his role at Omni Solutions, hinting at big projects on the horizon. With every word, he felt more powerful, more important. He was no longer just Anna's quiet husband. He was a man catching the eye of Krystal Monroe. When he returned to Anna, a triumphant smile on his face, she looked at him with an unreadable expression. "You were gone a while," she said, her voice even. "Just networking," he said dismissively. "That was Krystal Monroe. She's a big deal. It's important to make these connections. She seems very shiny," Anna commented, her gaze drifting back to the model, who was now the center of a different, larger circle of men. "It's called glamour, Anna. It's what success looks like." He retorted, a sharper edge to his voice than he intended. The conversation had planted a seed. But what Ethan couldn't possibly know was that this seed had been cultivated, watered, and planted directly in his path by design. Krystal Monroe was not there by chance. She was on the Volkov payroll. 2 weeks earlier, in a sterile conference room in a downtown office building that didn't bear the Volkov name, Mr. Davies had met with her. Krystal stripped of her party. Glamour was a shrewd businesswoman. "The target is Ethan Cole," Mr. Davies said, sliding a sleek tablet across the polished mahogany table. It displayed Ethan's complete profile, his psychological workup, his financial aspirations, his social media history. He is approaching the end of a probationary period. We need to ascertain his loyalty under extreme temptation. Krystal scrolled through the data, a professional glint in her eyes. He's ambitious, a little insecure, feels undervalued. Married to a quiet, bookish type, classic profile. He'll be easy. Your objective is to present yourself as a superior alternative. Mr. Davies instructed, his voice cold and precise. You are to be everything his wife is not. Ambitious, materialistic, socially aggressive. You will offer him a glimpse of a life he desperately wants. Your compensation will be substantial, with a significant bonus upon successful completion of the assignment. And what defines successful completion? she asked, raising a perfectly sculpted eyebrow. He has to make a definitive choice, an act of betrayal that is unambiguous and irrefutable. Mr. Davies stated, he must believe that choosing you means abandoning his wife. We need to know who he is when he thinks no one important is watching. Understood, Krystal said, a predator's smile touching her lips. Consider it done. Her performance at the gallery was flawless. She had identified Ethan's hunger and fed it just enough to leave him wanting more. The next day, Ethan received a message on a professional networking site. From Krystal Monroe subject great to connect Ethan, it was a pleasure meeting you last night. It's rare to meet someone in tech with such a clear vision. If you're ever free for coffee, I'd love to pick your brain about the industry. K. Ethan's heart hammered in his chest. It was happening. He was being noticed. He looked over his shoulder at the closed door of Anna's home office, where she was likely lost in some dusty 15th century manuscript. He felt a surge of adrenaline, the thrill of a secret, of a door opening into a world she could never understand. He typed his reply, his fingers flying across the keyboard. Krystal, the pleasure was all mine. I'd love to get coffee. How's Thursday? He hit send. The first real crack in the foundation of his marriage had appeared, and Anna, or rather Anastasia, sitting in her office, received a silent notification on her encrypted laptop from Mr. Davies. Asset has made contact. Subject has responded affirmatively. Phase 2 is engaged. Anastasia closed her eyes, a single silent tear tracing a path down her cheek. The test had officially begun. The coffee meeting was the beginning of a subtle but corrosive affair. It started innocently enough. They met at a chic downtown cafe, all minimalist decor and overpriced lattes. Krystal was a master of her craft. She didn't throw herself at him. She presented herself as a professional peer, a mentor even. She spoke of branding, of personal marketing, of how a man like him with his drive was being held back by a low-key, personal life. Image is everything, Ethan, she said, leaning forward, her voice a conspiratorial whisper. You have the talent, but you're not packaging it right. Your wife, for instance. She's sweet, I'm sure. But does she help you build your brand? Does she connect you with the right people? The words landed exactly where she intended, validating the secret resentments Ethan had been harboring for months. She's very private. He admitted the words, feeling like a betrayal and a relief at the same time. Private is fine for an artist or a poet, Krystal said with a dismissive wave of her hand. For a future titan of industry, it's an anchor. He started meeting her for networking lunches. He told Anna he was meeting with recruiters or potential clients, lies that slid off his tongue with increasing ease. With Krystal, he felt seen. He bought a new watch, a gleaming silver chronograph with a sapphire blue face, something Krystal had admired in a magazine. It was a stark contrast to the simple, leather-strapped watch Anna had given him for his last birthday. Anna noticed. She noticed everything. She noticed the way he started dressing differently, swapping his comfortable weekend chinos for designer jeans. She noticed the new expensive cologne that lingered in the air after he left a scent that was sharp and citrusy, completely unlike his usual woody fragrance. She noticed how he guarded his phone, placing it face down on the nightstand, a small act of concealment that felt like a fortress wall going up between them. She played her part perfectly. The concerned, slightly naive wife. Is everything okay at work, honey? She asked one evening, as he scrolled intently through his phone, a small secret smile on his face. You seem stressed, and you're getting so many late-night work emails. Big project coming up. He lied, not looking up. High pressure. You know how it is? Of course, she said, her voice soft. "Just make sure you're taking care of yourself." Inside, Anastasia was a tempest of conflicting emotions. The woman in her, the wife who had genuinely loved this man, was heartbroken. Every lie felt like a physical blow. She remembered their early days, picnics in the park, late-night talks about their dreams, the comfortable silence of just being together. Had any of it been real, or was he always just waiting for a better offer? But the Volkov heiress in her was cold, analytical, and resolute. This was a data-gathering phase. With Mr. Davies's help, she had a complete picture of Ethan's betrayal. Krystal wore a discreet pin on her lapel, to every meeting a high-fidelity audio recorder. Their entire conversations, every drop of poison Krystal fed him about his limiting wife, was transcribed and filed in a secure digital vault. Mr. Davies had also arranged for a new secret credit card for Ethan. An offer had appeared in his inbox from a prestigious bank, pre-approving him for a titanium elite card with an absurdly high limit. Ethan, believing his star was finally rising, accepted immediately. He used it to take Krystal to opulent restaurants he'd told Anna they couldn't afford to buy her expensive gifts, a silk scarf, a pair of diamond earrings. Each transaction was a nail in his coffin. A team of forensic accountants employed by Volkov Consolidated tracked every purchase. The restaurant receipt from a dinner he claimed was a late night at the office. The charge for a hotel bar on an afternoon he was supposedly stuck in traffic. The evidence mounted irrefutable and damning. One Saturday, Ethan said he had to go into the office to catch up on some paperwork. Anna watched him leave, dressed in his new expensive weekend attire. An hour later, she sat in the back of a black town car with tinted windows parked a block away from a trendy brunch spot. Mr. Davies sat in the passenger seat, his expression impassive. Through a pair of powerful binoculars, she watched Ethan and Krystal at an outdoor table. He was laughing a full, uninhibited laugh she hadn't heard in months. He reached across the table and tucked a stray strand of blonde hair behind Krystal's ear. It was an intimate gesture, casual and proprietary. It broke Anastasia's heart all over again. She saw them not just as a cheating husband and his mistress, but as a tableau of his choice. He was choosing the gloss, the performance, the public display of success over the quiet, authentic life she had offered him. He wasn't just cheating on a person, he was cheating on a set of values. "Is this sufficient?" Mr. Davies asked quietly, his eyes on the digital surveillance feed on his tablet. Anastasia watched as Ethan leaned in and kissed Krystal, a quick but deliberate kiss in the bright afternoon sun. There was no hiding, no shame, only a sense of entitlement. "No," she said, her voice surprisingly steady, a cold hardness creeping in. "The test isn't over until the 5th anniversary. He needs to make his final formal choice. Let him continue. Give him all the rope he needs." Mr. Davies nodded, a flicker of something that might have been admiration in his eyes. He had overseen these tests before. Some spouses crumbled under the emotional weight. But Anastasia Volkov was different. The heartbreak was real, but so was the steel in her spine. She was no longer just a wife watching her marriage dissolve. She was a CEO watching a failed investment, preparing to cut her losses and mitigate the damage. The poison of Ethan's lies was spreading, but it was Anastasia who was quietly preparing the only antidote that mattered: the truth. The affair escalated from furtive lunches to stolen weekends. Ethan's web of lies grew more complex and audacious. He invented a work conference in Portland, a team-building retreat in the mountains, a series of on-site client visits that required overnight stays. Each lie was a meticulously constructed alibi, complete with fake itineraries and names of colleagues he was supposedly with. He was living a double life, and he was thriving on the adrenaline. With Krystal, He was the man he wanted to be. They were seen at all the right places, their photograph appearing on a local society blog. Tech hotshot Ethan Cole and model Krystal Monroe enjoying the view at the Sky Lounge. He showed the photo to Ben Carter at work, a proud smirk on his face. "Told you, man," Ben said, clapping him on the back. "You're moving in the right circles now. What does Anna think of all your networking?" "She doesn't get it," Ethan said with a sigh, playing the part of the misunderstood husband. "Her idea of a big night is watching a documentary. I'm trying to build an empire here." Meanwhile, Anna continued to play the role of the devoted, slightly worried wife. She would pack his bag for his business trips, carefully folding his shirts, a dull ache in her chest. She'd wish him luck on his presentations, knowing he was heading to a boutique hotel with another woman. Her performance was so convincing that Ethan felt pangs of guilt. But they were fleeting, easily washed away by the intoxicating glamour of his new life. He saw her concern not as a sign of her love, but as proof of her provincialism, her inability to comprehend the high-stakes world he was entering. The noose, however, was tightening with every lie. Mr. Davies's team was a silent, invisible force, documenting his every move. When Ethan checked into the Hotel Lucia for his Portland conference, a discreet surveillance team in the lobby logged his arrival with Krystal. When he paid for their suite on his secret titanium card, the receipt was digitally archived. When he texted Anna, "Just finished the keynote, heading to bed early. Long day." Time-stamped satellite data showed his phone was actually at a high-end nightclub 2 miles from the hotel. One evening there was a near miss that sent a jolt of panic through Ethan. He and Krystal were having dinner at Canlis, Seattle's most exclusive restaurant, a place he'd always told Anna was out of their league. They were celebrating a fictional deal he claimed to have closed. As they clinked champagne glasses, Krystal's eyes widened slightly. "Don't look now," she whispered. "But that woman at the bar who just walked in. She looks a lot like your wife." Ethan's blood ran cold. He risked a glance. It wasn't Anna, but the resemblance was striking, the same chestnut hair, the same slender build. For a terrifying second, his two worlds threatened to collide. The thrill of the affair vanished, replaced by a raw, primal fear of being caught. He felt a sudden, desperate urge to be home in his quiet, safe house with his quiet, safe wife. The moment passed. The woman moved on, but the fear lingered. It was a crack in his bravado. Krystal, ever the professional, saw it and knew she had to press her advantage. "You can't live like this forever, Ethan," she said later that night as they looked out over the city from their hotel room. "Sneaking around, scared of shadows. A man like you shouldn't have to hide." "What am I supposed to do?" he said, the question sounding weaker than he intended. "I'm married." "Marriages end," she said, simply tracing a finger down his chest. "People outgrow each other. It's not a tragedy, it's just life. She wants a small, quiet life. You want the world. You can't have both." This was the core of her mission, to frame the situation not as a matter of right and wrong, but as a choice between two incompatible futures. He had to choose her world or Anna's. The test was designed to force this exact dilemma. Back home, Anastasia reviewed the audio from Krystal's recorder. She heard Ethan's moment of panic, his weak protestations, and Krystal's perfectly executed manipulation. She felt a sliver of pity for the man he had been, the man who was so easily led, so desperate for validation, that he would trade genuine love for a cheap imitation of success. The final piece of the test was being put into place. Their 5th wedding anniversary was in 3 weeks. Anastasia, playing the part of Anna, began planning a special celebration. I was thinking, she said to Ethan one morning, her voice full of gentle excitement. For our 5th anniversary, we should go back to that little inn on the coast where you proposed, just for the weekend. No phones, no work, just us. Ethan froze. He had already promised that weekend to Krystal. She had arranged for them to attend a charity gala in San Francisco, an event teeming with tech billionaires and venture capitalists. It was, she had told him, his coming out party, his official entrance into the inner circle. "Oh, honey," he said, forcing a look of deep regret. "That sounds amazing. But, damn it. My boss just scheduled a mandatory leadership summit that exact weekend in New York. It's unavoidable. I'm so sorry." The lie was enormous, brazen. He wasn't just inventing a meeting. He was erasing the most significant date in their shared history. Anna's expression crumpled a flawless portrayal of devastation. "On our anniversary, Ethan, can't you get out of it?" "I can't," he said, his voice firm, selling the lie with everything he had. "This is huge for my career, for our future. I promise I'll make it up to you. We'll celebrate the week after." Anastasia looked at the man she had married, the man she had once loved so deeply, and she saw a complete stranger. The test had never been about whether he would be tempted. It was about whether, when faced with a clear choice between her and the illusion of something better, he would remember his vows. He had just given his answer. She retreated to her office and made a call. "Mr. Davies," she said, her voice devoid of all warmth. "He's made his decision. The anniversary weekend. He chose the lie." "I have the details of the San Francisco trip, Miss Volkov," Davies replied. "Flights, hotel, gala tickets, all booked on the secondary card." "Good," Anastasia said, her gaze turning to the window, watching the rain begin to fall. "Begin preparations for the final stage. The test is over. It's time for the accounting." The week leading up to the anniversary was a masterclass in deception on both sides. Ethan was a whirlwind of false sincerity, showering Anna with apologies and promises. He bought her flowers, made her favorite dinner, and spoke endlessly about the incredible future his career advancement would bring them. He was laying the groundwork for his betrayal, convincing himself that his lies were a necessary evil on the path to a greater good that would eventually benefit them both. "I know this stinks, Anna," he said, holding her hands across the dinner table 2 nights before he was due to leave. "Missing our anniversary is the last thing I wanted. But trust me, when this promotion comes through, it will all be worth it. We can take that trip to Italy you've always talked about." Anna looked at him, her hazel eyes searching his. For a moment, he felt a flicker of the old connection, a pang of what he was about to lose. She had been his rock, his confidant. But then he pictured Krystal, the glamour of the gala, the powerful people he would meet. This was his chance to break free from the gravitational pull of their simple life. "I understand," Anna said, her voice a little too quiet. "Just be safe in New York." Every word was a lie. He knew it, and she knew it. The house was thick with unspoken truths. On Friday morning, Ethan packed his suitcase. He packed a tuxedo, patent leather shoes, and the new silver chronograph. It was the uniform for his new life. Anna watched him from the doorway of their bedroom, her expression a careful blend of sadness and support. "Call me when you land," she said, kissing him goodbye at the door. Her kiss felt cool, distant. He chalked it up to her disappointment. "I will," he promised. "I love you." The words, once the cornerstone of their marriage, now sounded hollow, an empty echo in the hallway. As his car pulled away, Anna closed the door and leaned against it. The facade dropped. Her face became a mask of cold resolve. She walked to her office, unlocked a drawer, and pulled out an encrypted satellite phone. "He's gone," she said to Mr. Davies. "Is everything in position?" "Everything is proceeding as planned, Ms. Volkov." His voice came back, crisp and clear. "Ms. Monroe is with him at the airport. Our San Francisco team is on standby. The legal team is ready. The board of Volkov Consolidated has been briefed and has authorized your full access to all necessary resources." "And the house?" she asked. "The packers will arrive in 1 hour. All of your designated personal effects will be removed and transported to the penthouse by this evening. The property will be vacated as per your instructions." "Excellent," Anastasia said. She looked around the living room at the comfortable sofa, where they had cuddled the bookshelf, filled with their shared history. It was just a stage, and the play was over. There was no sentimentality in her gaze, only the grim finality of a chapter closed. Meanwhile, Ethan was soaring, both literally and figuratively. On the flight to San Francisco, sitting in first class next to Krystal, he felt an exhilarating sense of freedom. Krystal was vibrant, touching his arm as she laughed, making plans for their weekend. "Tonight we'll have dinner at Quint's," she said, naming a 3-Michelin-star restaurant. "Tomorrow the gala. I've already told everyone about you. David Chen from Sequoia Capital is dying to meet you." This was it. This was real. This wasn't the quiet, predictable life Anna represented. This was the fast lane. He sent Anna a text as they were about to land. Landed in NYC. Crazy traffic, heading straight to the hotel for a prep meeting. Probably won't be able to talk until late. "I love you." The phone in Anastasia's hand buzzed. She glanced at the message, a mirror of the one on Mr. Davies's surveillance screen, which showed Ethan's plane touching down in SFO, not JFK. The lie was so blatant, so complete, it was the point of no return. That night, Ethan lived the life he'd dreamed of. At Quint's, he was introduced to a powerful software developer. He talked big, fueled by expensive wine and Krystal's encouraging smiles. He felt like he belonged. He felt like a king. At the same time, 500 miles to the north, Anastasia Volkov was shedding the skin of Anna Peterson. The moving truck had come and gone, taking with it only her clothes, her books, and a few personal mementos. Everything else, the furniture they had picked out together, the art on the walls, the very fabric of their shared life, was left behind, a husk of a marriage. She was now at the Fairmont Olympic Hotel in downtown Seattle, in the presidential suite that had been booked under her real name. Mr. Davies met her there, presenting her with a stack of documents. "This is the final evidence portfolio," he said, "including transcripts, financial tracking, and photographic surveillance. And this is the preliminary divorce filing drawn up by Jessica Pierce's team. It cites infidelity with irrefutable proof." Anastasia took the file. Her hands were steady. "What about Krystal?" "Ms. Monroe's final payment will be transferred upon confirmation that the subject is at the gala tomorrow evening. Her contract will then be terminated. She has been instructed to sever all contact." "Good," Anastasia said. She walked over to the vast window, looking down at the city lights. She had given Ethan every chance. She had given him her heart, her loyalty, and 4.5 years of her life. She had offered him a genuine partnership, a life of quiet happiness that in 6 months would have been augmented by unimaginable wealth. It wasn't enough. He hadn't wanted a partner. He'd wanted an accessory. He hadn't wanted love. He'd wanted status. The next day, their 5th wedding anniversary, Ethan called Anna's phone. He was getting ready for the gala. The sound of Krystal talking in the background barely muffled. "Hey, honey, happy anniversary," he said, his voice dripping with false melancholy. "I feel terrible I'm not there. The summit is a killer, but it's going well." "Happy anniversary, Ethan." Anastasia replied, her voice perfectly calm. It was the last time she would ever speak to him as his wife. "I hope you get everything you want out of it." "I will," he said, oblivious to the double meaning. "Listen, I have to run. Talk tomorrow. I love you." He hung up. Anastasia placed the phone on the table. It was done. He had stood at the final crossroad and chosen his path. He had walked willingly and eagerly past the point of no return. Now all that was left was the reckoning. The morning after the gala, Ethan woke up feeling like the master of the universe. The event had been a resounding success. He'd shaken hands with tech moguls, exchanged cards with venture capitalists, and stood proudly with Krystal on his arm, the perfect power couple. He felt invincible on the cusp of a brilliant new future. His old life, with its quiet suburban rhythms and unassuming wife, felt a million miles away. He rolled over to find Krystal already dressed, checking her phone. "Morning, superstar." She said, her smile a little cooler than usual. "You were a huge hit last night." "We were a huge hit," he corrected, reaching for her. She sidestepped his embrace. "I have an early photo shoot I have to get to," she said, her tone businesslike. "There's a car waiting for me downstairs." "Oh, okay," he said, a little deflated. "Well, my flight back isn't until this afternoon. Maybe we could have brunch." "I can't. I'm completely swamped," she said, grabbing her purse. She paused at the door. "Listen, Ethan, last night was fun. You're a great guy with a lot of potential." She said it like a manager evaluating a promising but junior employee. "I'll be in touch." And with that, she was gone. The sudden chill was unsettling, but Ethan brushed it off. She was a busy, important woman. That was part of her appeal. He was still buzzing from the night before, too high on his own perceived success to register the finality in her tone. He showered, dressed, and took a taxi to the airport, mentally rehearsing the toned-down corporate version of his weekend he would tell Anna. He felt a familiar, dull guilt, but it was now mixed with a sense of justification. He was doing this for them, for their future. He was building a better life. When his plane landed in Seattle, he turned on his phone. He expected a few texts from Anna, maybe a missed call. Instead, there was only one message received an hour earlier. It wasn't from his wife. It was from a name he didn't recognize. From Jessica Pierce Escorns, subject urgent, regarding your marriage to Ms. Anastasia Volkov. "Mr. Cole, please be advised that I am legal counsel for Anastasia Volkov, also known to you as Anna Peterson. Your presence is required at our offices at 3:00 p.m. today to discuss the immediate dissolution of your marriage. A car will be waiting for you at baggage claim. Your failure to attend will not prevent proceedings from moving forward." Ethan read the message 3 times. His blood turned to ice. Anastasia Volkov, Anna Peterson, legal counsel. It had to be a mistake, a prank, a sick joke. He frantically dialed Anna's number. It went straight to voicemail. He tried again. Voicemail. A cold dread began to seep into his bones, extinguishing the last embers of his triumphant weekend. He stumbled through the terminal to baggage claim, just as the message promised a man in a black suit, holding a sign that read, "Cole," was waiting for him. The car was a black Mercedes S-Class, the kind of vehicle he'd only ever dreamed of riding in. The silent, imposing driver opened the door for him. Numbly, Ethan got in. The drive was silent. They weren't heading towards their quiet suburb. They were heading downtown, deep into the financial district, to a skyscraper of gleaming black glass that bore no name, only a discreet, stylized V logo carved into the granite above the entrance. He was escorted to the top floor. The reception area was a cathedral of wealth Italian, marble floors, original modern art on the walls, and a panoramic view of Puget Sound. A severe-looking woman led him down a long hallway to a pair of massive oak doors. She opened one and gestured for him to enter. The boardroom was intimidating. A colossal mahogany table dominated the space. Seated at the far end, silhouetted against the floor-to-ceiling windows, was a figure he recognized with a jolt of shock. It was the impeccably dressed stoic man he'd seen Anna speak to once or twice, someone she'd claimed was the accountant for her freelance business. A sharp blonde woman in a ruthlessly tailored power suit stood to his left. She had to be Jessica Pierce. And in the center, in a high-backed leather chair, was his wife. But it wasn't his wife. Not the Anna he knew. The woman before him was a stranger. Gone were the soft sweaters and simple braid. She wore a bespoke navy blue dress that radiated authority. Her hair was styled in a sleek, elegant chignon. Her face was the same, but her expression was one he had never seen before, calm, controlled, and utterly devoid of warmth. She looked at him, not with the wounded eyes of a wife, but with the dispassionate gaze of a monarch about to pass sentence. "Ethan," she said, and her voice was different too, clearer, more commanding. "Thank you for coming. Please sit." He sank into a chair opposite her. It felt like miles of polished wood separated them. "I don't understand," he stammered, his voice hoarse. "Anna, what is all this? Who are these people? Your name—" "My name is Anastasia Volkov," she stated, her tone leaving no room for argument. "The woman you knew as Anna Peterson was a role I played, a role that has now concluded." Ethan stared at her, his mind reeling, unable to process the information. "A role? What are you talking about? The Volkov family has certain protocols." The man, Mr. Davies, interjected, his voice as cold as the glass tower they were in. "For the past 5 years you have been the subject of a standard marital vetting protocol, a loyalty and character assessment." "A test?" Ethan whispered the word, tasting like ash in his mouth. "Precisely," Anastasia said, her eyes locking onto his. "A test designed to answer one question: was your commitment to me the person, or was it contingent on a lifestyle you hoped to attain for 4.5 years you were on track to pass? Then you were presented with a curated temptation." Jessica Pierce, the lawyer, slid a thick bound portfolio across the table. "I believe you know Krystal Monroe," she said, her voice sharp. Ethan's face went white. He opened the portfolio. The first page was a copy of a wire transfer receipt for a staggering sum of money paid from Volkov Consolidated to Krystal Monroe. The memo line read, "For professional services rendered." He flipped the page. Transcripts of his conversations with Krystal. Page after page of his own words, his complaints about Anna, his boasts, his ambitions. He flipped again. Financial statements from his secret credit card. Every lavish dinner, every expensive gift, every hotel bill. Another page. Surveillance photos. Him and Krystal at brunch. Him and Krystal checking into the hotel in San Francisco. A grainy but clear shot of them, kissing at the gala on the night of his 5th wedding anniversary. The world tilted on its axis. The entire affair, his grand entrance into a new world, had been a lie. A setup. Krystal wasn't his ticket to the top. She was his executioner. He felt a surge of nauseating vertigo. He had been a puppet, and he hadn't even seen the strings. Krystal was an employee, Anastasia said, her voice cutting through his daze. She was hired to be everything you thought you wanted, to offer you a choice. You were given a clear decision: spend your 5th anniversary with your loving, supportive wife, or abandon her for a weekend of empty glamour and social climbing. You chose poorly. The weight of his stupidity, his arrogance, his monumental life-altering mistake crashed down on him. He looked at Anastasia, at this powerful, untouchable stranger who had been his wife, and for the first time he saw her. He saw the strength he had mistaken for passivity, the intelligence he had overlooked, the dignity he had trampled. Anastasia, He had no words. What could he say? I'm sorry, it was a mistake. The evidence of his choices was laid out in front of him in damning black and white. There is nothing left to say, Ethan, she said, standing up. The unveiling was complete. The quiet, unassuming wife was gone forever, replaced by the formidable heiress of the Volkov Empire. Ms. Pierce will now walk you through the terms of our separation. Ethan felt like he was drowning the air in the opulent boardroom, too thin to breathe. He looked from the damning portfolio to Anastasia's impassive face, his mind scrambling to find some purchase, some way to undo the cataclysmic reality unfolding before him. A test, he repeated, his voice cracking. You tested me for 5 years. Our whole marriage, our life, was a lie. He latched onto this, a desperate attempt to shift the blame, to paint himself as the victim. Anastasia's cold expression didn't flicker. Our life was very real, Ethan. My feelings for you were real. The home we built was real. I offered you a genuine loving partnership. The only lie was my net worth. The test was to see if your love was just as genuine. It's a sad irony that the only thing you seem to find offensive is my deception and not your own. Her words hit him like a physical blow. She was right. He wasn't horrified by his own betrayal. He was horrified that he had been caught, that he had bet on the wrong horse so spectacularly. Ms. Pierce, Anastasia said, turning to her lawyer, signaling that her direct involvement was over. Please proceed. She turned and walked towards a side door without a backward glance, her posture radiating a power he now understood was his to command, if only he'd been worthy. The soft click of the door closing behind her was the sound of his entire world ending. Jessica Pierce took her place. Mr. Cole. She began, her tone brisk and utterly devoid of sympathy. Let's be very clear about your current situation. You have committed adultery, a fact we can and will prove with an overwhelming mountain of evidence. You entered into this marriage under your own free will. Ms. Volkov's financial status, or lack thereof, has no bearing on your marital obligations of fidelity and loyalty, which you have comprehensively violated. She pushed a document toward him. This is a divorce settlement agreement. You will find it is non-negotiable. Ethan's hands trembled as he picked it up. His eyes scanned the legal jargon, but the key points leapt out at him. You will vacate the property at 45 Larchwood Lane immediately. Pierce continued as if reading his mind. The house is, and always has been, the property of a trust controlled by the Volkov family. Your name was never on the deed. Your possessions have been packed and are being moved to a storage unit, the first month of which has been paid for you. After that, it is your responsibility. His home? Gone. All joint bank accounts have been frozen pending dissolution. The funds within them can be traced back to Ms. Volkov's personal trust established long before your marriage. You will not be entitled to any of it. His money? Gone. The vehicle you drive is leased by a Volkov subsidiary. It will be collected tomorrow morning. We advise you to make alternative transportation arrangements. His car? Gone. Then came the final devastating blow. Furthermore, Pierce said, her gaze sharp as glass, we have prepared a comprehensive report on your activities. This includes your use of a fraudulently obtained corporate credit card, a bank with which the Volkov family has a significant relationship, and your repeated misrepresentation of your position at Omni Solutions to potential investors and business leaders while acting as a representative of their company. Ethan's stomach plummeted. "What are you doing?" he whispered. "We have sent this report as a courtesy to the CEO and board of directors at Omni Solutions," she said, calmly. "It seems you breached several clauses in your employment contract regarding ethics and conduct. I wouldn't expect your keycard to work on Monday morning." His job, his career, his entire identity, gone. In the space of 10 minutes, his life had been systematically dismantled, stripped down to nothing. "You can't do this," he choked out a pathetic whimper. "This is my life." "You made your choices, Mr. Cole," Pierce replied icily. "You gambled everything for a flashier prize, not knowing you already held the winning ticket. This is not punishment. This is simply the consequence. Sign the agreement, and you walk away with your freedom. Contest it, and we will countersue for the fraudulent use of funds, and potentially explore civil charges for fraud. We will litigate this for a decade, if we have to, burying you in legal fees you cannot possibly afford. Your choice." There was no choice. He was checkmated. He looked at the portfolio again, the photos, the receipts, the transcripts. His profound, irredeemable foolishness stared back at him. He had thrown away a life of love and unimaginable luxury for a cheap thrill and an ego boost. He had traded a diamond for a shard of glass. With a shaking hand, he picked up the pen. The weight of it felt immense. He signed his name on the line, the ink sealing his fate. He had entered this building as Ethan Cole, a rising tech star with a beautiful wife and a bright future. He would leave it as a nobody, with nothing but the suit on his back and a storage unit full of memories of a life he had single-handedly destroyed. Mr. Davies, who had been silent throughout, finally spoke. "A taxi has been called to take you wherever you'd like to go, Mr. Cole." The polite dismissal was the final humiliation. He wasn't even worth showing to the door. He stood up, his legs unsteady, and walked out of the boardroom, leaving his old life behind on that polished mahogany table. The reckoning was complete. The weeks that followed were a brutal education in consequence for Ethan. His termination from Omni Solutions was immediate, his professional reputation shredded by the quiet, damning report sent by Anastasia's team. Friends and colleagues like Ben Carter, who had once cheered on his ambition, now treated him like a pariah. He was homeless, crashing on couches, his desperate stories of a secret billionaire wife, and an elaborate loyalty test sounding like the ravings of a broken man. He was haunted, not by the loss of the quiet wife he'd taken for granted, but by the ghost of the powerful woman he'd never truly known. The life of unimaginable luxury he had thrown away for a cheap thrill became a constant, maddening torment. And the worst part was the inescapable knowledge that he had no one to blame but himself. For Anastasia, the aftermath was a quiet reclamation. Shedding the persona of Anna Peterson was a relief, but not without a pang of sorrow for the genuine love she had felt and the man she thought she had married. The test had worked, protecting her legacy, but the victory felt hollow, a reminder of the high price of trust in her world. One evening, looking out from her penthouse over the city, Mr. Davies gave her the final report. "All accounts are settled, Ms. Volkov," he said. "The protocol is closed." "It was a regrettable outcome," she said softly, "but a necessary one," he countered. "You are no longer living a deception. You are free." He was right. She had lost a husband, but she had reclaimed herself. The pain had forged a new resolve within her. There would be no more tests, no more hiding. She would face the world, not as Anna, the role she played, but as Anastasia, the woman she was meant to be, powerful, authentic, and in complete control of her own destiny. A new dawn was breaking, and for the first time in a long time, she was ready to step into the light. And so Ethan Cole's world, built on a foundation of lies, crumbled into dust, while Anastasia Volkov rose from the ashes of her broken heart, stronger and wiser. This story is a powerful reminder that true character isn't revealed when things are easy, but when we are faced with choices that test our loyalty and integrity. Ethan saw only what was superficial, chasing a life of glamour, and in doing so he lost a treasure beyond his wildest dreams. Was Anna's test justified a necessary evil to protect herself? Or was it an unfair trap from the start, a game Ethan was destined to lose? Could he ever have passed, or was his ambition always going to be his downfall? We want to know what you think. Drop your opinion in the comments below. If this story of betrayal, hidden power, and ultimate karmic justice resonated with you, please show your support by hitting that like button. Share it with a friend who appreciates a story where deception meets its match. And most importantly, subscribe to our channel for more real-life dramas and gripping tales that will leave you thinking long after the video ends. Your support helps us bring more incredible stories like this to light. Click subscribe now, and we'll see you in the next one.